In today's episode, we are joined by Jason Estes, co-creator of the much-anticipated quantum energy wellness beds. Jason not only explains how these beds can facilitate our innate ability to heal, but also dives deep into how we can naturally recharge our batteries, the importance of supporting both our bodies as well as our frequencies, and important insights around the use of plant medicines like ayahuasca. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. And in today's episode, we are releasing part one of our two-part series with Jason Estes. And I first came across Jason's work when people were sending me stuff saying, oh, you should got to interview Jason. He's got these new med beds that are coming out. And so as I started looking into this, Jason's actually very clear that these are not med beds. He calls them specifically quantum energy wellness beds. And he goes into detail as to how these things can literally help to facilitate your innate healing ability and almost help us to remember literally how to heal. I mean, at the heart of all of it, we have everything that we need inside ourselves to heal. I truly believe this. We just have to remember how to do it at a cellular DNA level so that we can actually then express health throughout our entire bodies. And these quantum energy wellness beds may play a significant role in assisting our bodies in remembering how to heal fully. So I'm really excited to share this information with you. As I started going into more and more detail of Jason's work, Jason is incredibly insightful on so many different things. So our conversation goes deep into a lot of different areas, and we talked for close to 2 hours. So that's why we broke this into two specific areas so you can just have a little bit of time to digest the information, because there's so many amazing insights in this episode. We talk about, also ask the question, what exactly is meditation and how is that beneficial? How do we naturally actually recharge our battery? We talk about voltage and how voltage plays a role in health. We also look at the idea of what resources do we require in order to actually heal? What do we have to have in order to even get all of the benefits from these different areas that are going to facilitate frequency and energy healing? But what resources do we need so that we can get the full potential from that? We talk about reality checks and what that actually means in our lives when we get these reality checks that just pop into our life. And that's a very interesting conversation. We also talk towards the latter half, we talk about plant medicines. And this is a very interesting perspective that I think is also really important at this point in time around plant medicines. Tay and I have been hearing lots of different pieces of this from different experts, and a similar message that has been coming across by many of the different people we have talked about, as well as insights that we've had ourselves. So I think that's also a very important part to look at and listen to and see how that sits for you. So make sure after you finish this episode, stay tuned for part two, which will be the first episode that will be released at the beginning of the new year. Now, as we are moving into the new year, I wanted to share with you some things to bring in to the new year for yourselves. So, as many of you know and have been following this work that we've been doing for a while, there's some pretty major changes taking place on the planet. There's big shifts in consciousness that are taking place. And Tay and I are always asking, what can we do to facilitate that? And for the most part, everything keeps coming back to us. It's not so much what I can do out here in the world. It's more, what can I do within myself that creates changes, which then is going to ultimately ripple out and have different interactions with those around us, with our communities, and ultimately with the world at large. And something that I want to share with everyone that I've been really taking to heart this last while, and this is information that came from Dr. Jacqueline Hobbs, or oraclegirl.org. You can check out her website. I think her work is amazing, and she's been incredibly beneficial for us over these past couple of years. And one thing that she talked about was that she said, pure love via the water in your cells materializes. But to see the results, you must do the following things. And I've really taken heed of these, and I'm really doing the best that I can to implement this into my life and live according to these guidelines. And so listen to these, and if these resonate with you, I think this would be a really amazing energy to take forward into the new year. So rather than say resolutions, I would maybe write these down and put these on my fridge. And I would ask myself if I'm living my life according to these, if they resonate with you. So the first one is put the earth and nature first, reduce your human footprint. Now, this essentially just means to be responsible, be a good steward of the planet. I think when we think about everything as having a consciousness, including the planet, including everything in nature, including everything we look at, then we start to interact with it in a different way. And so I think when we talked in one episode, we talked about being able to see the divinity in all things or to see the sacredness in all things. Nature is one of those things that we can quite easily connect to the sacredness in it. And when we do, then our choices become different. Okay, so that's how I think about that one. Put the earth and nature first, reduce my human footprint. The next one is to change my behaviors and take full responsibility. So we need to ask ourselves, what does that mean to take full responsibility for our lives? And then what behaviors do we adapt or modify or change? Which ones serve us? Which ones are no longer serving us? And are we able to then move that into action into our lives? No longer support what dominates, suppresses, or negatively controls. This is a really big one for me to pay attention to. There are so many things right now that dominate, suppress, or negatively control. And I think what we can do is in our own individual lives is look to see where are those things and can we remove ourselves and not participate anymore in anything that is dominating, suppressing, or negatively controlling. So sit with that one at some point and just ask yourself where you're feeling those things coming up. For me, the feeling is obvious. I feel anxious, nervous. I feel like I'm getting constricted whenever I'm in contact with anything along those lines. And I then want to move towards things that make me feel expansive, make me feel bigger, make me feel comfortable. And so if we pay attention to how the body is feeling, it will tell us very quickly if this is something that is closing down or if it's opening up. So pay attention to that. And then again, can you put that into action and actually not support them? And what does that mean? The next one would be spend money only on what upholds the new high frequencies. So it kind of fits almost in with the one that I just mentioned, but where we put our money is definitely an exchange of energy. So, do we want to support things that aren't upholding these new higher frequencies, or do we keep doing the same thing out of convenience? So, this might mean that rather than the convenience of spending money in somewhere that maybe is not so integrous, we maybe have to pull that back and find a way to support something that feels more in alignment with who we really are. So again, this is an individual one. I've got no judgment on any of this. I just think these are questions we need to ask ourselves. And then individually, how do we put that into action in our lives? The next one is to rebuild your body to take the new, much higher frequency you. This is a really important one. What can you do to support your physical body? As much as we are not just physical beings, we are here in a physical body having a physical experience, and we need to support this container that we have and take care of it. And the more that we support this, I think we can actually handle higher frequencies and different states of consciousness to some point. It's almost like the more that we build up this vessel, we can take it farther, right? It's capable of doing more. It can handle more. So think about what you can do to build up your physical body at this point in time. And a lot of this is not trying to force yourself to do it. A lot of times I find if the behavior is the last step. That's actually the weakest field. The first part is to get very familiar and a feeling of desire and then getting our intentions dialed in. If we can get a very strong feeling of desire as to why we really want to do something and then get a very clear focused intention on how we're going to do that, that is what is ultimately going to bring in higher frequencies into our behavior. Okay, we're usually not so successful when we just try to adapt behavior without that strong desire and intention backing it up. So again, ask yourself, what are you starting to move towards naturally? What is going to support you? Is there certain behaviors that no longer resonate with you, but you're still just doing them out of habit? Can you change some of that stuff? What about diet? What about movement? Some of the basic fundamentals, but check in with yourself to see what resonates. Okay. And focus on doing what you love, no longer sacrificing yourself. This is such a interesting one because a lot of times I find that what we love seems to get farther and farther down the totem pole for what we feel like we need to be doing. And I'm not saying there's not a reality to certain things that we have to do, but it's very important. And I know Tay and I, for the most part, when we even created Adventures in Joy, we really made joy our focus. It was like we wanted to look for it and we wanted to actively seek it out. And that doesn't mean you just all of a sudden jump into having these major experiences of joy or love. Sometimes it can, but it opens up the door for them to start to come in. And when you want to find them, you will actively start to seek them out. And then you do find them because they're ultimately everywhere. And then what happens is your reality literally starts to shift. It changes based on the state of consciousness that you are living in. And so for us, we really did want to start to focus more on the things that we love. So we literally had to sit down and really get focused in on what do we love? What really fills us up? What brings us the most joy? And how do we start to really invest more energy towards that and less energy into the things that make us feel a little more closed or stressed or not so much fun? And with all of this, it sometimes takes a certain leap of faith and a lot of trust and a lot of courage. And I think if you can move into the new year with some of these energies back behind you, I can guarantee you, you will have an incredibly different life by the end of the year. Probably by the end of the month, you'll see some significant changes. And I know for me, these have been absolutely groundbreaking and so important. And I know personally, the more that I incorporate these energies into my life and put them into action, it's one thing to kind of read them and resonate with them, but we have to then put it into action. We have to bring these things and make them into our life. We have to live according to these types of energies. And if we are, that's when you start to see all of these other things open up for you. You will naturally step into a different field of awareness, a different field of consciousness that will have very different options available that you currently might not have available to you. But if you stay the course, you put it into action, I guarantee you, you will find a lot of things will change for the better in your life. Now, these statements that I just mentioned to you played a big role into even who we chose to collaborate with. So we collaborate with C60 from Purple Power and from Ascent Nutrition. Both of these companies very much live according to these principles as well. And so we resonated with them very quickly. And when I look at rebuilding your body to take the new, much higher frequency you, they both contain products that can very much support this practice. So C60 from Purple Power is that groundbreaking antioxidant, most powerful antioxidant on the planet that is going to very much help to rebuild the body and prepare you for holding this newer, higher frequencies. It's going to support the vessel. It is definitely one of the best things that you can do to sequester free radicals and lower that oxidative load on the body, which generally helps to lower inflammation. So, definitely an important one to have in your arsenal as far as preventing illness and supporting resilience in your body. Ascent Nutrition has a number of amazing products. They've got an incredibly powerful pine pollen that I recommend for many people. They've got a great vitamin DK2. They've got a humic and fulvic acid that's their immune support. And they've got a really amazing organic mycotoxin and mold-free coffee, which I've talked about several times because if you drink coffee, experience what it's like to have mold-free coffee and see if you notice a difference. Some people, it's a really big game changer for them. If they are sensitive to molds, and a lot of coffee does contain molds, you will feel a very big difference between mycotoxin-free versus regular coffee. So check out Ascent Nutrition, check out C60 from Purple Power. Links are below. Use promo code DRLOKEN for a discount. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoy this show. And read back over those statements that I mentioned as far as pulling those into the new year. I may do something right around the new year, just talking again about that specifically, because I think it's so important. But if they resonate with you, put them on the fridge and see where you can start to implement them into your life. I guarantee you, you will have an amazing year of big change. All right. Take care, everybody, and I will talk to you soon. Bye bye. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Inspire Health podcast. And today's guest is Jason Estes. And I asked Jason to send a bio, and I want to read what he'd sent back because I think it's actually really beautiful and it really touched us. So, Jason sent back, I am a fountain, patient and kind. I wait for any to stop by that are thirsty for truth. The wisdom I hold is unconditional. The place I sit is humble. I am here for all, and I wait for you with fresh wisdom that flows and isn't hindered or held. I am tapped into the source of all truth and creation. Come and drink and remember who you are. I thought that was absolutely beautiful, Jason, and thank you for sending that to us. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. Yeah. I feel like oftentimes people make themselves out to be so much by putting all these letters and all these other things next to who they are. And I feel like if we can't define who we are by presence alone, we've kind of missed the point. Because like if I need to know that you have something in order to understand what you're saying, then you don't really have that mastery that you're claiming to have. But if I can just have a conversation with you and feel you out, that's so much more powerful. And for a long time, we required labels in order to understand reality, which that was a big misunderstanding, in my opinion. Like I looked at the world when I got here and I was like, wait, what? Why? Why is this the way that the world is? Okay, I'm going to spend the next 20 plus years trying to figure out the why so that I can understand how to change it back to the way that it could be. Not that it should be, because this is a collective experience. Like we're all making those choices together. But if I can at least solve why it is the way that it is, then other people can make the decision. I love to create choice where there wasn't one before. It's one of my main purposes in anything that I do.
Beautiful. Jason, can you tell us? So I've been listening to your work and your sharings for a few months now, and can you share with the audience who hasn't yet heard of you or that which you share, where you get your information from? Maybe we'll start there.
Okay. Yeah, meditation. So I don't do the channeling thing. I don't do all the other stuff. I live my life and I meditate, and then I live my life and then I meditate. And eventually over time, I got really good at living my life while meditating. And then it just was kind of from then on forward, it was just knowing the things that I needed to know when I needed to know them. So that's the short version of how I got where I am.
And what is meditation, in your opinion?
It's a state of being. So the best way to describe meditation is there's this thing called an action, right? And action leads to meditation for many people. But meditation is the state. The act of meditating is like opening a door to enter a stream of consciousness. But the thing is that so many people believe that this is the stream of consciousness because they're like, oh, I can do this breath work and immediately I reach this thing. They don't realize that every time they reach that thing, they're tapping a hole in the dam of creation. And each time that they do that, they're eventually going to learn to surf that stream and then just eventually embody that stream to the point where you're almost like a fish. You don't realize that there is anything else until you're out of it. And that's where you really want to go. But for the average person, they empower the tool or the technology that enters the state of meditation. And so they never actually get to hold it. Because if you aren't the reason that you're in meditation, then the action is the reason that you're in meditation. If the action is the reason that you're in meditation, you're never going to be there permanently because no action will work forever. And every time that you enter the stream, like I said, you're putting a hole in the dam of creation so that you can actually tap back into that fullness of it. Well, you can't tap a hole in the same location every time. So you might enter your first state of meditation in a fearful way. You might be like about to die in an experience, and like you just come into this total calm and peace place and you don't understand how or why. Or, you know, a lot of people who have car wrecks or major extreme situations find meditation for their first time. It's wild how it works. But in that moment where they see their whole life flashing in front of them, that's meditation. They're in the stream and they've now created a hole in that dam. And that's why people who have near-death experiences, they are really fun to talk to because they've created a hole in the dam that they can't refill ever. And when we enter it through actions, not just necessarily experiences, we can create holes that we can cover up again. And I think that that's one of the reasons why it's so complicated for everybody to stay in states of meditation. And they like let the experiences of the world define them instead of defining them for themselves.
When you were just mentioning some people experiencing versus through actions, what do you mean by the difference between that for people?
The best way to describe it is it's not about the action, it's about the feeling. So the action triggers a feeling. That feeling is that remembrance of the space on the dam. And then you have a choice whether you want to explore that feeling or not. So one of the biggest travesties on this planet is that meditation is taught by silencing your mind instead of the capability to master your mind, right? So if I have to silence my mind, but my mind needs to be active in that moment because that's the part of the dam that I'm working on. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, this 10-minute increment is designed specifically to silence my mind. And there's other plans for that moment other than that. Then I get discouraged and I go, oh, well, I didn't really earn my meditation. So now I need to go and do Vipassana for 10 days in order to fix this problem. And it's like, okay, well, now you're not living life. And life is going to keep taking you to that dam over and over again, giving you opportunities to puncture holes in it so that that stream begins to fill. But you see, we escape reality to try to get to that dam. Mm-hmm. And by doing so, we're not getting to the places where we're able to puncture holes. And then we start using medicines and all kinds of alternative methods, and we empower those instead of ourselves. And so we never really get to live in meditation. We live for the high of meditation, which is that active state of meditation. But it's not a permanent state of meditation. And then that leads to this whole other thing. It's the same reason why the bed is built the way that it's built. So almost all the technologies I've built and worked with, helping to create, are related to the same principle. Because after years and years and years of watching people do things in the weirdest ways on this planet, I was like, okay, I can respect that. You have no other choice. You have no idea what you don't know about these things. How can we help you to figure that out? And it really is pretty easy once you actually figure it out. Meditation is natural. Like as a child, they know it. Why do you think they're happy all the time? Mm-hmm. They are proof of meditation being a state of being and not an action. Because children don't do the same thing multiple times over. Mm-hmm. You have children, so you know. I don't have children, but like I've watched them, and that's an interesting thing when you have, like, I have a nephew, and I remember the first time my nephew got to see fairies with me. I don't know if it was the first time that my nephew got to see fairies. I know it was the first time that he got to see it with me. We were in this space, and I was toning, and the entire space lit up in those like sparklies, and you could just see all of it. And my nephew was like. And it was one of those moments where, you know, you have that moment with them and they experience it and they're like, oh, I remember this being a kid. I didn't realize that I could remember this. And that's because we build that dam over time because we're taught to. It's actually not natural. Dams are not necessarily natural. When they are naturally made dams, then the water still works around them in a somewhat of a way, right? Like look at how beavers build their dams. Do beavers build dams that completely shut off the water and stop the water flow entirely? No, there's still some that comes through. So why do we think that we should shut it off completely? The answer is it's too painful. It's too much feeling for a world that wants you to be numb. And because of that, we have the problems that we have. So that's kind of where we are. And it's hard because like when we talk about health, we're talking about a totality of everything, not just a single concept. If we were talking about a single concept, it'd be easy. It'd be like, oh, okay, are we talking about mental health? Are we talking about physical health? Are we talking about sexual health? Like, what health do you want to talk about? Mm-hmm. And in order to understand all of that, you have to understand why it exists in the first place. The word health, why does this exist? Well, it means that we are not intact because health simply means to be full, to be intact. So if we have to use the word health, then we have to acknowledge that we aren't something. And if we aren't something, then we create a need to be something. And that creates a debt towards us in society, which leads to all kinds of other problems. So I'll stop there because when I talk, I answer like 50 different questions at once, but create a whole lot more.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to find a new name for Inspire Health Podcast. You're Inspire Home. So what would you move to then? Because ultimately, I totally agree with you in that I mean, I think a lot of problems that have happened in medicine in general is that it's been designed to look at problems and designed to look at, um,
Disorders.
diagnoses, disorders, like something wrong. You're trained to look for something wrong. You're trained to look for pathologies, where ultimately what I work towards doing is to see the wholeness in people, to see the potential to,
Yeah.
and then to facilitate that transition or movement towards that. But or
Even.
the remembrance of that we are whole, we do have an innate self-healing ability, all of these types of things.
I love your word health. I don't think there's anything wrong with it, just for the record. Health means to be whole or intact. So to change it, inspire wholeness would be the same concept you already have with health. But the simple fact that we have health as a concept on this planet tells us that we've gone wrong somewhere, that there is a state of intactness that occurs somewhere in our creation. And that's a very interesting thing. If you really understand how we're created and why we were created, then you understand that that should never be the case. It's actually not that hard to get it to not be the case. I haven't been sick in over 8 years. You don't really need to be sick. It's easy to not be sick. It's actually harder to get sick. That's the part that blows my mind. So we have this thing where our bodies have to level up, but they only need the resources. So if we have the right resources and we have the right relationship with our body, we can pretty much go through anything, literally anything. I have a friend of mine who got majorly trashed. Like, she got her arm broken, her shoulder broken, both of her hips broken, her leg broken, and everything. And after a few weeks, she's up and around and walking again. Now, that shouldn't be possible according to science, but according to what can happen, it is possible. And the reason it's possible is because she is her own light. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on the show when we talk about the bed, because I'm pretty sure you guys are going to ask me about it. But a concept that we've forgotten is biolight storage. And that's something that's really important that the bed really works with. And the idea of it is to cultivate that space again, because our bodies are like a phone that is not charged. It's got to be plugged in. And so we find ways to plug it in. And what that means is, I don't know how graphic we can get, but a lot of people go to substances to plug it in. That's what we like. It's like supercharging your system, but then it wears down the battery even more so that it doesn't hold a charge as well in the future, because now you've torn holes in your system, right? And then you've got your other opportunities out there like drugs, alcohol, sex, all the things that give you dopamine releases, which are like a quick charge. But you also have this thing that people just forget exists, right? And that's peace. When you're in peace, you actually naturally charge. But because the environment that we live in currently has so much fear, so many things to take you out of peace, the average person goes, oh, well, you have fear and you are the majority, so here's my peace, and I guess I'll take the fear on. And it's like, wait, why? You were at peace, and then you got information, which is just information, and you immediately switch from peace to fear. What changed in your world? Oh, nothing changed in my world. So nothing changed in your world, and now you're not at peace anymore. Okay, I'm gonna have to sit and watch this for a while, see how this unfolds, really understand like the intricacies of why this is. And after a really long time, what I learned is our bodies, because of the way that we're raised, because of the way that we're conditioned, and the way that we're away from the forest, we don't actually learn to naturally charge. And so what happens is we are a battery that's perpetually low. And this is called voltage. And there's a really, really powerful way to look at the world is through this voltage perspective. Because when you're at 50 watts or higher, you actually can't get sick really. And when you get into like that 70 watt higher point, then like you're pretty much in enlightenment. The problem is maintaining it. So a lot of people take drugs and other things, as I said, but that actually destroys the vessel, which actually weakens the body. So the more substances that you're piling into your body from a chemical perspective, all you're doing is you're confusing your body more. You, the spiritual being, get to have this experience, and your body pays the consequence. One thing that changed everything for me when I was younger was I realized that there's a difference between if something's good for my body and if it's good for my frequency. And when I began to really ask those hard questions, okay, is this good for my body? Okay, cool. Is this good for my frequency? No. All right, awesome. Is this good for my frequency? Yeah. Is this good for my body? No. Because almost nothing on this planet, and this is really weird, but almost nothing on this planet that you don't alchemize yourself is good for your body and your frequency. One or the other, almost always. And so you're always playing at this war. It's like, okay, well, my frequency is more important than my body. No, I mean, your body's just as important as your frequency. Believe it or not, we are very important together. So to make one go higher than the other is to create an extreme that must be rebalanced by the universe. And so you get these really, really fun experiences in life that humble you, as people say. And that experience isn't fun for anyone. No one really enjoys those experiences. They're like, yeah, I'm super high. Oh, wait, why am I in jail right now? Oh, because I did drugs illegally in this place. Yeah, that wasn't great. Right? Like this whole process of being rebalanced by the universe, it always happens because you have to be at the right levels. And that's where meditation is. When you are actually at the right octave, which for whatever reason, science has shown that between 50 and 75 watts, those people are in natural states of meditation. So why is it that we're not in natural states of meditation? Mostly because we don't have hundreds of days to sit in a forest. To be real, like the house that we live in, well, not mine, but most people's houses that they live in kill biophotons. Most people's devices that they use kill biophotons. So we are in a world where living light is detached from the truth, which is the sky stream or that light stream that exists. Biophotons, the most dense form of light, because it's real light that is measurable, meaning that it's denser than the light spectrum itself, is what connects us to everything. So why don't we have them? By design.
Holy cow, I think I've got a list of about 10 things here now. But where I want to segue to, because you've brought it up a couple of times, and when I first started learning about your work, I had come across the quantum energy wellness bed. And there's been, as you know, tons of talk around things with med beds and this and that. And when I heard you speak about the quantum energy wellness bed, it really resonated with me. And you specifically talked about how it's not necessarily healing you, it's reminding or you're remembering how to essentially heal yourself through this technology. And that really resonated with myself and my concept of how I view healing to take place. It is all kind of within here, but we definitely need some remembering going on at this point. So I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about just when you started working on this and sort of the principles, how it works with. We've talked about biophotons a few times. So I'm going to pass it over to you to sort of round this concept out for people that have probably heard little bits of it, but don't know the whole story.
I'll make this really fast because I like to take things that are super complex and make them really simple. We don't have structure in our bodies anymore in the way that we used to. When you have the proper structure, instead of information just passing through, it begins to bounce back and forth, which I call translation. So the ability for information to stay and to actually update and upgrade your structure is key to everything. If you think of the universe as map, then your job is to be the solver of that map. And every time that you solve something, you actually hold it in your field as a structure so that everyone around you can solve the same thing faster. And what's really cool about this is actually proven by history, because you look at something that's impossible in the world. Literally, people are like, oh, it's impossible to run a 4-minute mile. And it's like, nothing's really impossible when given infinite time, which is like the premise that I build everything and teach everything on is nothing is impossible without infinite time or within infinite time. So it's literally not impossible to achieve anything if we have infinite time. Well, where are we headed right now? Into infinite time. Because as we break away from the space and time that we are, where we use time to allocate resources to store memories or to stamp that time onto space, then we create that space, right? But that space, that memory, is a footprint in the sand that forces us to go back in time to resolve that. And that's where trauma comes in. That's why we hold it the way that we hold it. So all of that is to understand structure. Structure is the key to everything. The sky is broken, which is the reason that we have the world we have. The extreme weather patterns, all the things that we have is the same thing. But what is within us is without us. It's out here, it's also in here. And if it's in here, it's also out there, right? And so where do we go to fix the sky? This is where it gets really interesting. Ourselves. You want to fix this guy? Fix yourself. If you have the solution to something within you, you've mastered that level of math, you can repair anything by presence alone. And this is where the idea of the bed comes in, is the bed helps to provide the structure that comes naturally through nature. We call them bioantennas. And if you go out into a forest, a real forest, not one that's been manicured, but a real forest, they're incredible because the microbes, everything in there is communicating with itself and teaching and learning and growing. And so what happens is that space has so many solutions available to you that you go out there and all of a sudden that stress, that tension in your body within minutes to hours goes away. Well, why can't we build something that does the same thing? Enter quantum energy wellness bed. Why not create an ability to basically be in a forest for 100 days in 20 minutes? I mean, what is humans' purpose again? To solve. So if we're going to build a world where we're required to sit on screens that kill biophotons, that hold devices that kill biophotons, that live in a room that kills biophotons, that has so much disconnect from nature, then we're going to have to kind of learn it faster. So how do we learn it faster? Well, we have to provide all the resources and we have to provide the structure, and then we let the body choose what it needs to solve in that moment. So when you give the solution to something, it doesn't do it immediately. Some people do because they have the amount of resources ready and they're just like, boom, done. But other people, it can take, several treatments. Why? I should call it sessions. So several sessions. And the reason for that is because the person isn't ready to let go of the illness. And this is what gets really weird for me. Seriously, just like out of the world weird to me. People have learned to build a structure around their personality related to their illness. So I have this thing that will help you with this thing. And all you have to do is be willing to let go of the other thing. And people go, okay, yeah, that sounds good. And then you're like, okay, well, do you want to do anything around that? And they're like, yeah, when? And I'm like, okay, well, I have these things available. And they're like, oh, well, actually, all excuses, right? And then you start watching and you start really seeing that people just don't want to heal. They don't want to be intact. And then you have to figure out, well, why is that? And the answer is they don't want to be empowered. They say they do, but they don't want the responsibility required. So what does it look like to maintain your health? Well, that requires time and space, because now that you've started your healing journey, you have to figure out why the thing was broken in the first place, which when you actually begin to solve the corruption in your form, you actually find more corruption in your form, not less. And that first 6 to 8 months of healing requires you to look at things differently. You actually, let's say that the reason that you have cancer is because you're in a bad relationship and you've been swallowing all your resentment this whole time. Now you get to start working on healing, and that cancer starts to come up and you start to look at those broken patterns, and all of a sudden this relationship you're in doesn't look as pretty as it did anymore. And so you then hate the person who helped you to see the thing instead of actually solving the rest of the equation. And then you get back with that person and you degrade again. And then you're like, well, nothing really works. I'm just doomed to cancer. I'm this person who has cancer. So then you cut it out, right? Because that's the next step, is like to physically remove something from our bodies that are designed the way that they're designed. And so it's like, okay, well, now we have a hole where we once had something. By the way, that also destroys structure. So everything is compounding that destruction of structure until eventually your body doesn't run like it should because there's no way to repair it. But the thing is, this is the part where for anyone out there that's like, oh, I've done surgery, I'm so screwed. No, you're not. It's not a real thing. You can't be. As long as you're alive, you can still do exactly what you came for. Here's the thing that people don't put together. When you were a little tiny embryo, the only thing that was different then than now is that you had a space where you were in that created all the resources necessary for you to build a brand new body. Literally, the only difference. Oh, and also you didn't have any misunderstandings. So that whole process. But then the moment that you actually come in at about 6 weeks into that embryo and you begin to bring your soul's contracts in and everything else, now what you're getting is your misunderstandings, right? And now that you've got these misunderstandings, all of a sudden deformities occur. So you might grow a little different than you were planning to. Density has its way of playing some fun little games. Your mother might have drank alcohol while you were pregnant, or while she was pregnant. So now what happens is all of a sudden you start to develop other things. Your cells start to do a little different. You've started to dissolve the structure. Okay, not a big deal. We can fix that. All we have to do is go back inward and find the places where the structure is broken and repair it. Now, is it happen overnight? No, because you have to heal. And this is where I'm dead set against med beds and the concept that people present with them is to inject something, to forcibly regrow something is just a really bad idea because you miss the premise and purpose behind why the thing isn't there now. I'm all for rebuilding things. I believe that we can totally heal. I was able to heal my shoulders completely. And what I was told was I would never heal. It was impossible. I would never have full range of motion again in my life. But meditation allowed me to see that that wasn't true. So you see, what we believe to be true is just as important as what is true. So if we believe that we are Jason, the one of cancer, for instance, then that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But if we want to be Jason again, we've got to let go of the one with cancer, right? And that process of doing that. But that kind of, I digress a little bit when I come to the bed perspective, because the bed doesn't make you not the one with cancer. The bed doesn't change the one that is blind, right? Like it's not those things that it changes. It simply shows you an option so that you can change if you want to.
I love the way that you explain that because it really does. I mean, I feel like so much of what people are learning right at the moment too, or remembering, is bringing back that kind of self-authority a little bit, that we are capable of doing a lot more. We're sort of taking back that self-authority to be responsible for our own lives. And what this is really doing is it's just, again, letting us, it's setting the stage so that we can step into that, and that then through our own conscious choices, we can move in a direction or not. And they're just choices, but it's giving you, it's almost like it's opening up a bit more of a remembering, or a field of more possibilities that you can choose to step into if you would like to.
Exactly. Yeah. And the more work that you've done, the faster that you're capable of growing into that healing or that intactness, right? Because that work is you letting go of the structure of who you believe yourself to be. You see, there's a really cool thing about reality. It never lies. Your reality absolutely 100% lies. My reality absolutely 100% lies. But reality itself, the thing that reflects truth in all moments, it can't lie. So when we have an experience where we're like very clear that we are not what we think we are, oftentimes we choose to be humbled in that moment and go, oh, well, I am not immortal because I just went through this experience where I almost died. So if I'm not immortal and I could be immortal, why am I not immortal? And questions like this start to unravel in our mind. And most people who have a near-death experience get to go through this experience where they go, oh, I just danced with mortality in that moment, and there's nothing I can do to believe anymore the way that I once believed. Those are called drastic experiences or extremes. They only occur when our frequency is higher than our body, or our body is higher than our frequency. It's always from an imbalanced state that we have imbalanced experiences. I haven't had a car wreck. I haven't had any issues or anything since I figured that out. Not even a speeding ticket. Because there's nothing that needs to show me that I'm not being true to who I am, as long as I'm being true to who I am. Now, does that mean that I'm perfect? No. For anyone out there who thinks I am, you've missed the point. I'm just Jason, and I do my best to stay just Jason. I might be Jason who built blank. And now I go, okay, well, nope, I'm actually just Jason. It's not Jason who built blank. It doesn't matter what I built. My job is to be part of Team Humanity and bring what I came to bring here as best I can, and let others do the rest. And people go, well, why is that? Because we have infinite time, guys. Like, it doesn't matter if you get it right now. All that matters is that I get it right now. Because if I get it right now, then the rest is up to you to make choices. You see, true power is not taking choice from someone else. True power is creating choices for others. Because by doing that, you level up the whole game and the wholeness of the world. It's the same reason why everything that I do is on that same premise. It's like, okay, no one's free until each are free and all are free in each other. Well, what does that actually mean? It means that I'm not going to be totally free until my reflection of me is completely free as well. How do I do that? Well, my reflection of me needs choices because I needed choices. My structure was broken, their structure is broken. There's nothing wrong with that. We're all broken because we're still in a physical form and we're still in the timeline that we're in. So the sooner that we stop trying to be the one that's greater than everyone, right? Because that's a title as well. Greatness, hierarchy, all those things, they're titles. And as long as we have those titles, we break the structure of the perfection of who we are. And that causes us to get sick. That causes us to have reality check us to make sure that we are true. And that's what a reality check is, a moment of truth that can't be ignored. You've just gone through a reality check. Do you want to keep going through reality checks? Probably not. So stop being something you're not.
You had mentioned, so what I heard earlier was really interesting when you spoke of, or how I understood it, when you're starting the healing process, you see more breakdown. And I can't help but see how that's playing out on a macro level as well right now. Can you speak a little bit more about the state of the world that we're in currently?
Yeah, I predicted that we would be exactly where we are. Like if you actually go back and watch some of my older videos, I said we're going to go through a major sickness, one that we can't ignore. And the reason is because when there is a transition of a new structure being shared, which is where we are, as humanity, we are now being given a completely new structure. The way that reality once functioned, which was called a co-reality, is no longer what is happening. And because there is no longer a co-reality, we have a sovereign reality, meaning we live in moments instead of trying to co-create reality, which is super messy. We now have the biggest breakdown we've ever had as human race. Literally, you can go all the way back through time as humans began to now, and we've never had a stronger reality check than we do today. But it's not what people make it out to be. People are making it out to be this war because they don't want to let go of their identity. And it's really cute because I get to watch it all the time. People are like, oh, well, this person did this thing, and so I can't like them anymore. And I'm like, so they made a choice, and that choice made it where you can't like them. Sounds like it's your problem. They're like, no, it's their problem. They're the one that made the choice. And I'm like, okay, but you can't like them. So you can't like them. You do hear your words, right? If you can't like someone, it's your problem. If you don't want to like someone, it's still mostly your problem, but there could be something there on the other side. But can't, that's a strong word. You've ended choice, which means you've disempowered yourself. So the moment somebody does something that you can't like them for, it's your time to work, because that means you're not seeing them clearly. You're not letting them be in their sovereign reality, their choice. That's been the hardest thing, I think, these last few years for me, is letting people make their choices and watching them and being like, there was about 1,000 other ways that could have happened. Cool. Let's see how this unfolds. Because one thing about what I do is I recognize patterns really, really clearly. So when somebody goes into a pattern that causes their structure to dissolve, I know that that's not my place to tell them. And when I was younger, I didn't know that. I used to tell people, hey, if you continue this route, you're going to be dead in like 8 months. Please don't do this. I really like you as a friend. And they would be like, that's kind of scary that you can tell all that. I'm like, well, here's what's going to happen. These things are going to lead to this. This is going to lead to this thing. This is going to happen here. And then you're just going to end up in a car wreck and die. And they're like, how could you possibly know that? And I'm like, oh, it's really obvious. You just look at the patterns. Like these things all stack up. You can't stay alive if you continue this route. And then I realized that's not my place. It never was my place. And I became a lot more fun to be around. But before that, I didn't know what I didn't know, right? Just like everyone else on this planet, I was trying to figure it out. And oftentimes people think that like, because they see me where I am today, where I'm like playful and I'm able to accept a lot more, you don't just start here. Everyone works through their own stuff to get as clear as they can, and then is open to the reality checks if necessary. That's the key. You can't not be open to reality checks, because reality is always going to work with you, not against you. And if it checks you, it means that there's something that's off with you. So just be open to it. Doesn't mean you want them. I definitely don't want any reality checks, but if I need one, I'll get one. And I just sit there with it and I go, okay, this thing just happened. I'll tell you a perfect example. I just had these solar panels put on my house. And when they were doing the solar panel work, they accidentally dropped a screw in the AC vent. And it caused this whole thing where my AC unit, a screw was shaking in it for an entire month. and tore up all of the guts of the thing. It got so bad that the screw actually hit the gas valve inside of it, and my house could have exploded. But that next day that this happened, literally the next day, my scheduled maintenance for my AC unit happened. And the guy was like, your whole house could have been like, this could have been a very bad thing. Glad that we're here. Also, you now have to buy a brand new AC unit. And I was like, well, guess I'm not investing in crypto right now. And that was the whole process. It was just like an acceptance of like, I have what I need to support this, because you always do. If you believe that you don't have what you need, you miss the understanding of what need is, because you were still alive, you were still functioning. You might not have what you want, but in that case, I wanted to invest in crypto and I wasn't allowed to, and that was okay. No big deal. But the reality check was that if this had been left, if I had not agreed to certain things in my life that I knew that I should agree to, my house would have blown up and I would have died. That was a very quick ending to my life. Why did that have to occur? Because we were going through a timeline transference. So a version of me needed to die off. And so an experience was created. But in this reality, that experience was navigated perfectly. You see, when we go through the world, there's always reasons for everything. And it's really hard for us to understand those things because we're in a human form. If we were in our totality, if we were truly in that infinite nature of who we were, we wouldn't question anything. We would just smile all the time and have a really great time. But also we wouldn't have any value to it, because it wouldn't be something that we achieved. It wouldn't be something that expanded us. It would be simply something that was. And that's why we added space and time together for the first time to play this game out on Earth, was to figure out, hey, what would it be like to have memory, to actually know things were really pressury or not pressury, right? To feel that. So that's kind of like the gist of understanding health, is we had to create health. Otherwise, you wouldn't know what health was. So what would life look like if you were fully intact all the time and you'd never known anything other than fully intactness? It would just be life. That's not helpful for when you're trying to understand and heal the past, because there is no past.
I wanted to ask too, I mean, Jason, I think that's actually such a powerful way to think about everything too. It adds a whole different layer of perspective when people are going through different experiences. One of the founding sort of principles in osteopathy when we did training in that was said structure governs function. So it actually gives me a complete different appreciation, a much more expanded appreciation of what that concept even means. We would take it as structure of the physical body, is creating the functional problems within the body. But it's sort of what I like is when you hear certain things and these sort of truths pass over into lots of different places. I always feel like there's something to that when you hear that. So that's the first time I've ever heard it explained in the way that you did that. But I think that just, for any osteopaths out there that think about it from this page, expand that concept beyond just the physical body and the physical reality. Now, you also mentioned that the resources that need to be there. So from your perspective, when we talk about resources, what are some of the fundamental resources that you feel are important for people to be able to even access all of the healing potentials that could come from something like the quantum energy wellness bed?
It's a great question. Yeah, so resources can be different for each person. So it's hard to say what everyone needs, right? Because some people need electrolytes. Some people need trace minerals. Some people need sea solids. Some people need palladium, like whatever it is that their body is needing. Some people need monoatomic gold. I don't know. I'd have to meet each person. But what we have found is that palladium works really well with it. Like working with palladium as an energy source for our body allows the current to run a lot better. So one thing that I like to share is cloud water. It's just one of the things I've built. It's this right here. If you feel the energy of that, then that's cloud. So it's a palladium based M state, and it works with the monatomic perspective of your body. So it's like very, very small particles that help to repair the structure. But like everything that I design, and the bed is no different. For the record, that's an engineering thing. So I helped to work with the bed, but it's not my design fully. Like this person that's been working on it has been working on it for 30 years. I just helped to get it to the point that it's at now into the world. So that's a whole different thing together. But because we partnered together to work on it, it made sense. Like it's this thing where it's like, hey, like you're doing this thing and now I don't have to. Thank you. Like the more that people do that with their approach, the better. If we can collaborate on things, then we don't have to rebuild the wheel over and over again. We would be so much further right now, so much further. So that being said, resources are really dependent. And the thing that I really want to point out for anyone out there that's new to me and doesn't understand is you can have to take the resource sometimes, like you need to take it for your physical body. Sometimes you just need to know it exists. Sometimes you need to hold it. Sometimes you need to look at a photo of it, right? Like there are so many levels. And this is where this question comes in so importantly. Is this good for my body? Is this good for my frequency? If the answer is no to either, then it's not in front of you to do it. It's really important that you don't take resources that aren't in front of you to take, because by doing so, you overbalance your body. I think it's like something like 40% of your body's weight is actually microbes. It's either 40 or 50%. I can't remember, but it's a lot. Well, what are microbes? They're the most energy sensitive creature to ever exist. They learn, they create structure. They're kind of like, kind of a poor example, but I really love this example. Microbes are like spiders. They have the capability to weave structure in your body in a way that it needs to, right? They're a microorganism that basically rebuilds your structure for you naturally. It's actually really cool. I can't get into certain things because I know that you're planning to put this on YouTube, but what's happening right now in the world, and the reason that we have another thing that's happening in the world that's getting rid of this thing that's happening in the world, is microbiology 101. It's solving the problem, because there will always be a solve for a problem, because eventually the microbes get together and say, hey, this structure is broken. What can we create in the world now so that this structure can be healed? How do we give them a choice again? So no matter what humanity does, there's always going to be a choice recreated in the future. It's really fascinating. Moments that should never exist because we've decided to do very interesting things with our choice are now happening, and nature's responding and fixing it. And it's like, dude, nature, you are like on point, high five. Sometimes I wonder how nature is so awesome, but it really is. Like it literally works and takes care of itself if it's not broken nature, which again is like really understanding that we've chosen to break nature. And I can spend hours talking about this topic, so I won't spend hours talking about this topic, but the microbiome, the microbiology aspect of it, that is rebuilding your structure in your body. When you take things that are too high frequency and you test and it says, oh, this is not good for my frequency, but it's good for my body, what you're doing is you're shattering something, whether it's your field or your body. And your field creates structure and your body creates structure. And if you're not on the same page, then you're not able to network the two together. And that creates separation, which leads to depression, anxiety, stress, fear, all of those things. The only way that you are ever controllable, meaning that you're willing to give away your choice to have something, is when you're disconnected. And the only way you're ever going to be disconnected is if something is not good for your body and good for your frequency, or if something is good for your frequency and not for your body, and you take it. Because you're guaranteed to stop structure on one side or the other. Your divine intelligence will restructure you faster than you can imagine. 21 days. 21 days is all it takes for your entire body to resync up if you just take care of it. That's it. 21 days. Like, how many people here have 21 days to live? Most everyone listening. So why is it that we have the world we have? Because they can't do it. We get to this point where we're like on the 18th or 19th day, and we have a craving for something that's not good for us. And everybody goes, well, why is that? And I say it's entities, but from another perspective, like we can look at it as like physical ailments, like candida, for instance. You're literally feeding an entity.
Yeah.
We have a name for it. There are lots of different things like that out there. The reason is we're not looking at it as a whole experience. We're looking at it as a body experience or a spiritual experience. We're not actually putting the two together. And so when we rebuild structure, though, we naturally heal. It's amazing. You literally, there's nothing in this world that can't be healed if you have the proper structure. All you need is the right resources. So you have to find things that are good for your body and your frequency, and at the right rate. 90% of the spiritual products out there, and I mean like literally 90% of them, are absolutely horrible for your body because they fry you. They like, it's an expansive thing of energy that explodes and it destroys the structure between your body and your field. And so you get this amazing high and then this amazing low after, because you get that disconnect and then you become addicted. That's all addiction ever is a space where structure doesn't exist. now an entity exists and is holding those two structures together for you, and you have to feed it. Why? Why would you want to feed the thing holding the structures together for you when you could be the thing holding the structure together for you?
This totally makes me think about right now. Plant medicine has become a very big thing for a long time. And I remember talking to a friend of ours who's a shaman out here, Huna Mautataki, and he said that asked him about the plant medicine, asked him specifically about plant medicines, just because we've kind of come across lots of different information. And even in the world of sort of, medicine, they're doing a lot of research into trying to bring a lot more awareness around plant medicines and sort of its role. And he specifically said, connect to the light, but leave the plant in the ground. And
Yes.
and
100%.
that really resonated with both of us, because, even for myself, there's been lots of opportunities. But it's come up in front of me, sort of like you've talked about, but it never resonated. And so it just was always kind of something that just for whatever reason for me didn't resonate. But to me, when I'm thinking about that, and at least when I'm talking to other people that have had certain experiences, it seems like they get something, but then it comes back down, and there becomes it very easily then feels like you can't get there without this. And
Correct.
that's the part that to me feels like that can't be in line with, because it's not honoring that we can get there ourselves completely. So I'm wondering, from your perspective, is there a place for plant medicines, or has that place just no longer in this sort of timeline where it's not necessary?
Or even when you speak of frequency, I think of it, that makes a lot of sense to me, because I read a trilogy called Tell Us. It's channeling the Lemurian brothers and sisters. And how they spoke of plant medicine is that the plants that are available on the planet currently do not have the same frequency that they originally had intended for them to. So it's very different from the original state that they were in, and it's not the same. And in the Tellus books, they highly recommended that we do not partake in plant medicine for that reason.
Exactly. Yeah. So how far down the rabbit hole do you guys want
You
to
go as far as you want to go.
Wherever you want to go.
So the Earth itself was designed with a lot of extraterrestrials, meaning that the Earth was a place to form gods, literally. That was the entire premise and purpose, was over 28,000 years without being influenced or to be changed or shifted or forced, with absolute free will. Could humanity become gods? Could they become a level of understanding that they could contribute to the universe? And that's the entire premise and process that Earth began, E1. Now we're on E5, so it's a completely different iteration, completely different things, copies of copies of copies of copies. And what occurs when you have copies of copies of copies of copies is you lose the frequency. You lose the essence, the purpose and premise behind it. But there are still locations on this planet where that is not true. That there are places deep, deep, deep in the Amazon where there is still absolute frequency. And you can walk into those spaces and there are beings there that are waiting with you. And it is life-changingly transformative because it's a presence. So all of the plant life, if you actually ever go, I mean, you probably won't in this lifetime, but when you go to other planets, they're not nearly as diverse. Seriously, like no other planet in this entire universe and mostly in the omniverse is this diverse, because this planet was the best of everything brought. Literally, the kingdom of heaven was brought here and built here. Earth started out as a water planet. It had no land, no mass, other than the core. That was it. And over time, when beings came here to terraform, they communicated with the creatures of the water and said, will you keep the memory? Please keep the memory so that we can learn from our mistakes, so that we can grow into what we are. And they said, yeah, we'll keep the memory. We will take care of this. So over time, once this was consulted and accepted and a plan was created, beings came to Earth and it was terraformed. That's where we get the word terraform, is to form terrain, to build land, right? And we terraformed this planet. And then everyone from all the races came together to plant trees, to bring animals, to do everything they needed from the arcs to rebuild this planet, to build it as it needed to be. But the water was the most important part, because the water would hold the memory forever. In a little bit, you're going to start to see stuff happen on this planet that's unheard of, things that no one can understand, beings coming that haven't been seen in like a long, long time. Because what happened was, as we began to disrespect our covenant with the water, the beings of the water, the creatures like the dolphins and the whales, those are some of the only ones that still remain to this day. All the other ones are formations up. And so the essence is different, because we've kind of tortured the water on purpose. We torched it. Literally, we dumped oil into, we did everything we could to try to destroy the memory in the ocean, because we knew that if we ever did that, then we wouldn't have to have the example. And again, this goes back to that whole thing of like, if you ever help somebody try to heal and then they find out that the problem is their spouse, they will immediately make you out to be the villain, because they either have to heal and let go of the thing that's causing the problem, or they stick with the problem and make you the villain. What did we do to the ocean? Same thing. We said, you're the evil, not us. So we started to pollute the ocean. We started to tear it down. Then immediately after we got the ocean broken enough, the sky broke. Well, why would the sky break? Because the sky actually is the largest ocean there is. Where did all that water go when we put that land? Do you think that it just raised the water? No, we put it in the sky so that we would be completely surrounded with divine intelligence, so that we could never forget. It was actually one of the most brilliant things ever. Humans had a capability of doing things that we didn't really expect them to do. A lot of extraterrestrial influences. Fast forward, and here we are today. Here we are today, where almost every person that has ever been part of this game to help it change is here again. And we're rebuilding the world. One of my initiatives is CRM. We're putting source seed trees, these little tiny things right here that create an 8-dimensional resonance, under a tree, and letting the tree learn its true source frequency over again. Same thing like a quantum energy wellness bed, right? Except for trees. And it's infinite, forever. It's a little tiny thing. So planting 1 million of those helps the tree to restructure. And what's really cool about this is we've actually gotten some really cool testimonies about like how floods happen everywhere around the tree, but the tree, because of structured water weighing more, it immediately goes into the earth. It's like sucked in like a straw. And so instead of the house that has the source seed trees being flooded, it just floods everything around it, because it's not nature. But when it is nature, it knows how to handle it. So it's that structure, right? It's the need to do that. And that's why they were all planted the way they were planted. There's not an insect alive, not a plant species alive, nothing alive today that doesn't belong here. This is where it gets really weird when it's like, oh, a mass kill-off plan. Let's go ahead and kill off the bees. It's like, you guys realize that was a thread, right? Like a thread in the structure of all that is. It attaches to everything else. You're part of that. You don't? Okay, that's fine. Well, I guess we're going to just see how this goes. And the bees go into hiding, and they make sure to stay in a certain place so that their frequency is never stamped out completely, because everything that exists is here still. That's something that people don't think is true, but it is. Nothing is ever extinct. It goes into another dimension, and it is capable of coming back in the right time. It has to be. Why do you think that we have so many creatures that we know existed at some point on this planet, but don't right now? Their code still exists here. They've just gone to another place where they don't have to deal with us as human beings, because we're still infants. We shouldn't be, but we are. Well, why shouldn't we be infants? Because we've been altered. We've been affected. Things have happened here that weren't part of the necessary plan and has led us astray a little bit. But also, this isn't the first copy. We're the 5th copy. Just for a second, just sit with that. It's like, okay, yeah, a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. It's called a simulacrum. We've created a simulated reality of what we believe to be true. And this is really cool. So I actually didn't know a lot about plant medicines. So I decided to go to the Amazon and study ayahuasca. I wanted to understand it. I wanted to understand why it was so important. And the shaman I studied with, he was an amazing guy. He didn't let you take the plant medicine. He took it himself, but he trained for 30 years to get his body and his frequency in a level where he could actually hold that frequency for you. And all it was a solution. He would just hold the solution for you, and bam, you just go straight into it. Because all those solves would be there, you would have prepared, had all the resources, and you'd be deep in the Amazon where biophotons are just in mass. And after that experience, after realizing what it really was, I was able to look at it and go, okay, I know why we do what we do. I get this part, I get this part, I get this part. Because again, pattern recognition, right? And one of the main things he said is never do this outside the Amazon, ever. The Amazon is designed the way that it's designed. The forest is designed to keep this frequency and to echo it back so that it builds the structure so that you don't go too far, you don't go too fast, all these other things because of how it's done. But then human arrogance came in and was like, oh, I don't really need the Amazon. That's not important. I'm just going to take it to California. It's like, okay, there's literally no forest there that's designed to protect you. Like, why would you do that? Also, redwoods are nothing like the Amazon. Like, we are completely different species, different planets. If you want to understand more about the Pleiadians, go to the Amazon. If you want to understand more about the Arcturians, go to California. Like, I mean, come on, like, we just have to realize that there are different races here. And if we go to different places, we get different experiences, different frequencies. But we are a multicultural race, meaning that we come from all the stars. Many of us here in our bodies that are formed at this point have had multiple star systems run through them. So what does that mean? It means that the entire planet is important, not just one place or another, but if you want to activate a certain thing, you go to a certain area. It's the same reason why we have so many different ancient societies that have done things that don't make any sense. We're just like, wait a second, Egypt? That's interesting. Oh, look, Mayans, they did something kind of similar. Interesting. They like this same ideas, but completely different frequencies. If you've ever been to Mexico and experienced the Mayan and Aztec stuff, you're just like, no, okay, that's a completely different frequency. Then you go to Peru and you're like, oh, okay, that I love that frequency. But other places, it depends, right? Because you get a different experience each place, but they're all relevant. And then we go through this time in history where nothing changes for a very long time. And then all of a sudden, amazing things happen really quick. And they lead to bigger problems, though, because you don't look at the consequence. When you go to the bathroom and the forest takes what you've given, the brokenness of it, and it creates a new structure. It actually goes through and finds all of the problems in you and actually creates an amplification from the tree that shares the code that you've broken in your body. So all you have to do is be around that tree. And now that tree is echoing the truth back to your body so that your field goes, oh, hey, I have this thing broken here. Okay, cool. Why do you think people that are super sick don't ever want to go to the forest and go camping? They're too busy, according to them. But the truth is, they don't want to let go of the identity of being sick because it makes them special. It makes them different. And that's, again, a whole thing with the belonging and the way that our psychology works. So
Wow,
that's so fascinating, you know, and even in a lot of the indigenous cultures and people we've talked to within that community, they would often say that when people were ill, you know, they would do different things. They would incorporate different treatments. And then if it wasn't working, they literally would send them out into the wild to be in the wild to heal and let nature just heal them.
Oh, I think of even animals when they're in pain or when they're sick, they actually just kind of go into the forest alone on their own until they heal.
Like you said, if you're open to that and you're not sort of attached to needing to stay ill for a certain reason, then going into any kind of nature, whatever local nature you can get to, is incredibly healing. I mean, we've been big proponents of that for a while. And I know just for ourselves too, even when everything was going on initially, we actually really shut off from everything and just spent lots of time just in nature. And
by
it was
water,
by water, I mean, at the time we were in Vancouver Island. So we were kind of around a lot of really beautiful nature around that area. And I mean, it was incredibly healing. And it also felt like it helped us get back to knowing our own state of truth within ourselves without being so inundated by everything else.
Yeah, I've always wanted to go to Vancouver. I've been told that one day I will get to go. And when I do go, that I'll have all the solutions that I'm looking for. And I know why, because I know that area and I know the star rays that seeded that area. And it's the one piece that I'm waiting the most for. But at the same time, I also know that if I go there too soon, it won't be good for my body or my frequency. And so that's why I won't go. It's the same reason it took me most of my life before I went to Egypt, because I knew that I had to be at a place. You see, oftentimes we travel because of entities. We travel because we want to look a certain way, we want to feel a certain way, we do all these things, right? And it's like, wait, like you do realize you're moving to a different location with different frequencies. You want to be ready for those frequencies. Why are you not asking that question? And the average person doesn't ask that question because they don't know that question exists. That's our struggle. If we knew the right questions, like imagine if you were a child, you were like 3 or 4 years old, and when you were that age, you were taught about frequency and body, and how they were working together to create something. And you explained it in the most simplest ways. I actually want to do some coloring books around structure to like teach children this, because it's something that I'm really passionate about, is teaching the children what everything that I've learned in my life that I wish I knew as a child. Because like if you understood that, you'd be like, oh, well, these carrots on my plate aren't good for me. Even though my mom says they're good for me, they're actually not good for me. Now, it would lead to some really interesting arguments with children and parents, though, for sure. They'd be like, well, I tested my frequency and this broccoli is not good for me today. And you as a parent would be like, oh man, well, can't really argue with that. Mm-hmm. Even if it's true or not true. I mean, hopefully they would be truthful. But the point is, it leads to really good discussions that would actually cause things. Because then you could be like, as the parent, well, actually, I've tested and this is good for you, or it isn't good for you. You're right. And you would celebrate them. And then imagine what they could grow up to be, though. If their structure was fully intact, the bed, they wouldn't need that ever, right? They wouldn't need anything really, because they would have access to everything and nature would provide the rest. So why is it that we don't have that? And the reason is because we were designed to become consumers. So our charge had to be perpetually low or empty, because you won't consume something if you're full.
Wow. So we have a 17-year-old and a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old. And I know with my 17-year-old, I was much more in tune with authorities outside of myself and not paying as much close attention to my child and what he wanted and what he didn't want. And so, you know, eating 3 times a day, specific things that was deemed to be important for nutrition for his body by an external authority, mainly the media, mainly government, mainly the doctor. And so that's changed tremendously now, because right now we have a 4-year-old that primarily just wants fruits. Like, she's happy living off of fruits. And our 5-year-old eats everything, like everything. She will, and
loves it. It's exciting. She's happy with it.
She's very happy, and she can consume anything. She likes her meat. She likes her fruit. She likes her sushi, her Indian food, her Persian food, anything and everything. She's happily eating, and she's very fit and strong and sturdy, and very different. I mean, you just look at kids and they're just built differently. And so this perspective that you're bringing forth and blowing our minds with, I feel is so important, because once we understand our reality and the truth from this vaster, broader perspective, then we're just tuning in to where we currently are. And like you said, what's in front of us, and conducting ourselves accordingly on what innately feels true within us, rather than continually looking for an outside source to get directions from.